All right, so let's get right into it. What is galvanizing? I mean, you've seen it everywhere, right? On guardrails, streetlights, huge building frames. In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the science behind one of the most important processes protecting, well, pretty much everything around us.
But, to really get the solution, you first have to understand the problem. Steel, it's the backbone of our world, the skeleton of our cities. But this incredible material, it has a huge fatal flaw. So, what do you think it is? What's steel's greatest weakness?
You guessed it, rust. The official term is corrosion. It's this enemy that just never stops. The very second that unprotected steel hits the open air, it starts to break down. It's a relentless attack that weakens and eventually will destroy the structures we depend on.
And seriously, think about that for a second. From the tiniest little bolt to the most massive bridge you can imagine, steel is constantly under attack from the elements. This isn't a problem that might happen. No, it's a certainty. The battle against corrosion literally begins the moment a piece of steel is created. So, how do you protect this hero of construction? Well, there are a few ways to fight corrosion, but there is one undisputed champion of the world: hot dip galvanizing. And let me tell you, this is so much more than just a simple coating. It's a complete high-tech defense system. Now, the really crucial thing to get here is that this is not like a layer of paint. Not even close. Zinc and steel, they have this special chemical relationship. With hot dip galvanizing, the steel is literally dunked into a vat of molten zinc. This kicks off a chemical reaction, forging a whole series of super tough layers that are fused directly to the steel itself. And okay, this is where the science gets really, really cool. This protection isn't just a simple wall. The zinc coating has two distinct, let's call them superpowers, that work together to give decades of totally maintenance-free protection. Let's break them down. So superpower number one is the armor itself. During that dip in the molten zinc, the zinc doesn't just sit on top of the steel. Oh no, it actually reacts with the iron in the steel. This creates these unique zinc-iron alloy layers that are bonded to the steel, and then it's all topped off with a final layer of pure zinc.
Now, get this. This is the part that is just incredible. Those inner alloy layers that form, they are actually harder than the steel they're protecting. Think about that. The coating is tougher than the thing it's coating. This makes it unbelievably resistant to scratches and dings. It's basically like giving steel a suit of armor that's stronger than its own skin.
Okay, but what happens if that super tough armor does get scratched? That brings us to superpower number two. As one of the sources puts it, the zinc coating will not be undercut by rusting steel. So what does that actually mean? It means something called galvanic protection. It's amazing. If the coating gets a deep scratch that exposes the bare steel, the zinc right next to the scratch essentially sacrifices itself. It corrodes instead of the steel, protecting the exposed area. In a way, the coating actually heals the wound, stopping rust dead in its tracks, so it can't creep underneath and spread. So we know what it is, and the science behind how it works. But how do they actually do it? I mean, in a real factory. Well, the whole industrial process can be boiled down to three basic steps that take raw steel and turn it into a product that's protected for a lifetime. It's a pretty logical flow, right? First, you prepare the surface. Second, you do the actual galvanizing. And third, you inspect everything to make sure it's perfect. But I'll tell you what, that first step, surface prep, it's arguably the most important one of all. See, for that unbreakable zinc-steel bond to happen, the surface of the steel has to be absolutely perfectly clean. We're not talking about a quick rinse here. It's a serious three-part cleaning process. First up is degreasing, to get rid of any oil or gunk. Then it gets a pickling bath in mild acid to remove any rust or scale. And finally, fluxing, which puts on a special coating to stop new rust from forming right before it goes into the zinc. You can't skip a single step. And then it's time for the main event. The perfectly clean steel is completely submerged in a giant kettle of molten zinc, which is heated to about 840 degrees Fahrenheit. The huge advantage here is that the liquid zinc flows everywhere, inside pipes, around tight corners, into every little crack and crevice. It protects 100% of the surface, inside and out. This is where the magic happens, and those bonded protective layers are formed. Okay, so that's the process. It's tough, it's effective, it stops rust. But the real story, the real impact of galvanizing goes way beyond just one piece of steel. This is where we need to zoom out and look at why this whole thing truly matters for the big picture. Because look, when you make things last for decades or even a century without needing constant repairs or replacement, you're not just preventing rust. You're talking about a massive positive impact on sustainability. This is about being so much smarter with the resources we have.
The sustainability story really starts with the material itself. Zinc is a natural mineral, and it's pretty abundant. But what's really cool is how good we are at reusing it. Right now, about 30%, a third, of the entire world's zinc supply comes from recycled sources. That's a huge head start.
And the recycling numbers get even better. Of all the zinc out there that could be recycled, from old buildings or products at the end of their life, we actually reclaim and reuse a full 80% of it. That is an incredibly efficient system.
And here's the key. This is the big one. Zinc is 100% recyclable, infinitely. You can melt it down and reuse it over and over and over again, and it never loses any of its properties. It's the perfect material for a circular economy. So what happens when you combine that superstar of recycling, zinc, with steel, which just so happens to be the world's most recycled material? Well, you get a final product that has, on average, a 70% recycled content. That is a massive win for sustainable building.
So let's tie this all together. You're using a recycled and infinitely recyclable material to dramatically extend the life of our steel infrastructure. This slashes the long-term environmental impact. Less maintenance means less energy, fewer resources, and way lower costs over the entire long life of a structure.
And when a galvanized steel building or bridge finally does reach the end of its life, maybe 70 or 100 years later, it's not trash, it's a resource. The steel and the zinc can just be reclaimed and recycled, ready to start the whole process over again. It's a nearly endless cycle.
And that kind of leaves us with a final big thought, doesn't it? As we're all searching for ways to build a more sustainable future, we're often focused on inventing brand new materials or finding new sources of energy. But maybe, just maybe, one of the most powerful strategies is one we've had all along, simply making the things we already build last. Could the real secret to building the future be found in the simple art of preservation? What do you think?